it's just like a temporary marriage.
Oh, thank you, sister. Appreciate that. Yeah. So there's no pleasurable situation for the weekends when your wife's going on a shopping trip.
Or vice versa.
Or vice versa. And there is no blame upon you for what you mutually agreed to give beyond the obligation. Indeed, it lies healthy and wise. So let's look at it. From the previous verse, we conclude that the women who are permanently prohibited for a man because of blood relationships are 7 types. His mothers, including his grandmothers from both sides and further up. I have a hard time wrapping myself around this. I just can't imagine someone wanting to marry their mothers or their grandmother anyway. But alhamdulillah. His daughters and granddaughters and farther down. His sisters both full and half, and I will define this for you. His paternal aunts, including his father's, grandfathers, mothers and grandfathers' paternal aunts, and further up. Is everybody following me? Pardon me? Well, my wife judges as crazy, but this stuff happens.
No, I mean, like, if you look in Greek mythology, weren't people, like, killing their father to marry their mother and stuff? So it must have happened. It must have been something that was culturally done.
And let me tell you, in the South, we have so much incest. So, I mean, let's keep it for rizzle for snizzle. It's happening today. Most of us know of a situation, if we went to school in America, where someone had a relationship with their father or something.
Yeah, I heard that last time. It was a girl, she's like 22 years old. She got married with her dad.
Yeah.
That's...
When I was in California in 1986, I met a girl who said she'd give anything to be married to her father. And that was a time somebody chased me too. I chased myself away.
But that's illegal in this country anyway.
It is illegal, but the point I'm saying is that people are expressed this desire. So there are people that have this desire. So I don't think that it's not valuable to look at what the Quran says here. I think we need to know this. I think it's important. It's probably crazy to my wife because she can't fathom it. His maternal aunts, including his father's, grandfather's, mother's, and grandmother's maternal aunts and further up. His brothers, both full and half brothers, daughters and granddaughters, and further down. His sisters, both full and half sisters, daughters and granddaughters, and further down. And this just happens a lot. You know, somebody gets married, they have children, they marry somebody with children, and they might get married. It happens. The women who are permanently prohibited for a man because of marital relationships are 4 types. The wives of his fathers and grandfathers and further up. This prohibition occurs as soon as father executes his marriage contract on a woman, even if he does not perform intercourse with her. Everybody clear about that? The wives of his sons and grandsons and further down. This prohibition occurs as soon as the son executes his marriage contract with the woman, even if he does not perform intercourse with her. This is actually, many scholars believe that the reason that this was prescribed was to prevent situations of incestuous marriage. We know that this has also occurred similar to what Ibrahim was talking about in cases of adoption. When very young people have had children and given them up for adoption, that child is then married another child from that particular person. It happens. And how many people have either seen a television show about this or read about it? It happens. So it does happen, and there's a reason why Allah reminds us of this. And this is another reason why Muslims should not change their names. If I change my surname from Sykes to Ali, or Abu Bakr. And maybe my father sowed some seed somewhere and I later on marry this woman and it might be my sister. But she thinks I'm Abu Bakr or Ali because that's my surname. And this, so Islamically, you should definitely not change your surname because your genealogy is affected by that. His wives' mothers and grandmothers and further up. The prohibition occurs as soon as a man executes his marriage contract on a woman, even if he does not perform intercourse with her. The daughters and granddaughters and further down of the wives with whom he performed intercourse. In regard to stepdaughters, case for above, most scholars hold the opinion that they are all prohibited, without exception, as soon as their stepfather performs intercourse with their mother. They say that the custody restriction in Surah 4 and 23 is a description applicable to all stepdaughters. Does that make sense? And for those people who are new to the class today, this is unusual. Our class is not quite this detailed usually. This is a subject that I've agreed to cover with by request, and so I apologize for all these intricacies for those who are here for the first time today. This is not the way that our class always runs.
So Woody Allen, thinking
I
maybe
was thinking about it.
a spindle or something? Yeah.
Of course.
The famous actor,
Yeah.
Woody Allen, married a stepdaughter.
Adopted daughter.
Adopted
daughter, yeah.
daughter.
Married to Mia Farrow, they adopted kids, and then he married the daughter.
But he was in custody of her. He was her guardian.
Yeah.
So that would make it prohibited for him, if he had been Muslim, to marry her. So here is the prohibition based on milk relationships. The milk of the breastfeeding mother gives the baby nutrition and growth. When a woman breastfeeds a baby, the baby becomes related to her in a way similar to her developed or delivered child. Aisha ibn Abbas and Ali reported that Allah's Messenger said Allah has prohibited of marriages based on breastfeeding what He has prohibited based on birth or blood relationships. And this is Al-Bukhari, Muslim, and others. Breastfeeding that results in prohibited relationships must satisfy the following conditions. It should be performed on 5 or more distinct suckles. And that's not just latch on, well, they're not really sucking right now. Latch on. It's the lining, the nieces, the lining of the stomach must be filled. So you know when you feed a baby, after you feed them, they look fat. They have a little belly. Their little t-shirts are all filled out. And they actually look a little funny, you know. The baby should be hungry and it should drink its fill in each suckle. All prohibiting suckles should take place before the baby's weaning at age of 2. So that's another stipulation. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you.
So I like the explanation of how things worked when babies used to be sent away to be breastfed, but how about nowadays where you have women pumping breast milk and then donating it, and it could be, does it have to be like a suckle, like body to body for it to be considered your milk baby, or is it just the 5 full feeds? Because those 5 full feeds could come in the form of donated breast milk in a bag from the same mother.
Yeah.
And in that case, it's sent to a milk bank, then it's distributed to a lot of babies. Everybody loses track of, whose milk went to whose child. And it could very well be 5 cycles or more because, you can donate a lot. And so how does that work?
That's a great question. Let me say Allahu Alam first. Allah knows best. That's always the safe answer. I'll be right with you just a minute. But what I will say is this. In the Islamic paradigm, in the modern world, do you think women are donating milk? I'm sincere.
Yes,
they are. Yeah,
Okay,
they are.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Especially in the neonatal units at the
Yes.
hospital, they're definitely. But as a Muslim mother, with us knowing, as a Muslim, I don't feel like we should donate because of the you know.
Unless you know exactly who it's going
Yeah.
to, in which case you keep track of the fact that this applies.
See, if you know who it's going to, you don't have a problem. But I think when you're talking about giving it to a bank, you are setting up these situations that could occur. Because, you know, so the best thing is to err on the side of caution. You know, if you want to protect that. Yes, brother.
So what's the harm in, like, what's the real harm that you're trying to avoid? So then you can kind of work and think about it.
Well, Allahu Alam, and again I'm saying Allahu Alam because I deem by Allah, and those of you mothers who breastfed, there is a bonding that takes place in the actual breastfeeding process that is different from the bottle. We know that a baby, when it is breastfeeding, actually looks mesmerized. We know that a mother, when she's breastfeeding, her stomach begins to contract back. That actually is a way to bring her figure back into her uterus. Thank you, back into
Normal state.
normal state. Thank you. Your questions are great. So it means I've got to study some more. I really don't know how to answer that. I'm guessing psychologically, this has more to do with the psychological bonding process, because it is huge. I mean, there's so much research about the psychological bonding that takes place in breastfeeding.
So if that's the case, why would a mother want another woman to breastfeed their child?
Sometimes they don't have a choice.
Well, sometimes, some women won't lactate. They just won't. You can talk to any lactation specialist, and you'll find that some women just will not produce milk.
Why don't they just give it
They don't produce enough.
Well, because they would prefer for them to have that antibiotic, the natural antibiotics that come from the breast.
It's healthier.
And some babies can't tolerate formula.
And the formula is not a natural product. So,
No, but I don't think I would want another woman to.
and you have that right, but this is a Quranic dictate.
But they didn't have powdered milk and baby bottles at that time either.
Right, they didn't have powdered milk and baby bottles in the desert
Yeah.
because they would have had a hard time finding them. Well, let me have my little bit of water in this powder, shake it up. Here you go, baby.
They didn't have a choice.
That absolutely. So you know, there's a lot of cultural issues that we can look at here that are very different today. But you know, I had not even thought about the breast bank. I really want to give some thought to that. And it's almost time to wrap it up. So I want sister and then you. Okay.
What about if a woman, wife gets khula and she's still legally married? What is the point?
According to Surah An-Nisa, the husband should maintain her, or it's a choice. He can hire someone on her behalf to breastfeed that baby.
No,
This
my
is from-
question is different. I'm talking about, it's not this point. You make point like if they're not legally divorced, they're not divorced.
Right.
But if Muslim woman got khula, but she's still legally married, she's divorced.
No, that's it, you can't.
You can't marry somebody if you have
No,
khula.
not married, but is she a divorced woman or not?
If she got khula, she's divorced.
Yeah. But she's legally married.
How can she be?
She's
in the process.
Oh, civil. Okay, I'm with you.
She's in the process. Yeah.
Well, if you have to abide by the laws of the land, and I just recently dealt with this and I refused to marry somebody because the woman was married to a Muslim man, was waiting for her civil divorce, and came and said, Imam Said, we want you to marry us. I said, I will not. When you get your legal divorce, I'm sorry it takes a year in this country, but I will not marry you to a second man.
But don't you have to wait 3 months after the divorce though?
The
Yes,
divorce
like-
starts from the time that you pronounce divorce. It's 3 months that is required for the reconciliation. It's recommended for reconciliation.
During the divorce
It
process?
begins, for example, this is how it would look. I'm just painting a picture. Sharon, tell them, if I was your husband. All right, we got 90 days to try to reconcile. It begins from the moment that I pronounce it. Okay? At the end of that 90 days, you should be able to get a legal certificate of divorce from the Islamic authorities.
Is this for reconciliation or make sure you don't have a baby left over?
Well, it's both. Remember I showed you this in the Quran when we went over this? The idea for it is two things. To make sure there isn't a baby in the womb. And the second idea is for reconciliation. So there are two reasons. How much more would you want to reconcile if there was a baby involved? If you could. So, alhamdulillah, we covered a lot of stuff today. Maysoon, we're on slide
Is this the salsa bills, Christian?
133. I want to get this last question. Sorry.
It's actually not a question. I just wanted to elaborate on the breast milk issue. My mother died of breast cancer, and she had not breastfed either of her two children for various reasons. And when I got pregnant with my first child, I did research, and I found out that one of the many benefits of human milk is that it decreases breast cancer in the mother and the female child by 30%. So I had a lot of trouble. I went to lactation consultants with all four of my children, and I had a lot of trouble, but I just persevered and I did it. But a lot of women aren't able to do it, and honestly, formula is synthetic milk. It doesn't have the benefits, not just the breast milk, but antibodies and all of these other things that have human benefit. And if I couldn't breastfeed my children, I would rather give them breast milk from someone else.
Thank you. I really appreciate you sharing from a personal experience. I really like that, and I'm sorry we ran out of time for sharing today, but I want to get to the festival because I got to relieve somebody. I love you all for the sake of Allah. Great questions. We will start next week, inshallah, talking about the month of Ramadan. And so preparing your heart for that. Ask Allah to open the crevices of your heart to be wide open to receive all the goodness of these months. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.